never thought I'd become the kind of girlfriend who tests her boyfriend, but Jake was pushing me to my limit. Was he there? Jake asked one evening, his voice tight as I mentioned my favorite coffee shop. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Marcus. Your ex, I sighed. Jake, that was 2 years ago. Can we please drop this? But he couldn't. Every conversation somehow circled back to Marcus, the ex-boyfriend Jake had never met but had built into some mythical figure in his head. The perfect, successful man I supposedly still loved. You liked his photo on Instagram, Jake said another night, his phone thrust in my face. It was from 3 years ago. The algorithm just, you're still thinking about him. I'm not. My voice rose, frustration boiling over. You know what? Maybe you need to meet him. Maybe if you saw there's absolutely nothing between us, you'd finally drop this obsession. Jake's eyes widened. I don't need to meet him. Yes, you do. I grabbed my phone, fingers already typing before I could reconsider. Because your insecurity is ruining us, and I'm going to prove you wrong. The next morning, I stared at my sent message to Marcus. Hey. Hope you're doing well. Random question, would you be free for dinner sometime this week? My boyfriend Jake has heard so much about you, and I thought it might be nice for you guys to meet. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but it was too late. Message delivered. Marcus replied within an hour. Sure, sounds good. Thursday work? There's that Italian place downtown we used to like. That Italian place. Our place. A small pang hit my chest, but I pushed it away. When I told Jake, his reaction wasn't relief, it was anger. You actually contacted him? His voice was ice. Yes, because you won't stop obsessing. This way you'll see he's just a regular guy and there's nothing to worry about. I never asked you to do this, Sarah. You didn't have to ask. Your jealousy is asking for me. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was exhausted. Exhausted from defending a past I couldn't change. Jake was silent for a long moment. Fine, Thursday, but don't expect me to be happy about this. I reached for his hand. Jake, this is going to help us. You'll see. But as Thursday approached, doubt crept in. What would Marcus look like now? Had he changed? Would seeing him stir up feelings I thought I'd buried? No, I told myself firmly. This is about proving Jake wrong. This is about our future. Thursday evening came too fast. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a navy blue dress, casual but nice. It's going to be fine, I said in the car. Trying to convince myself as much as Jake. He didn't respond. Just gripped the steering wheel like it might escape. When we entered the restaurant, I spotted Marcus immediately. My breath caught. He looked incredible. More confident, more polished. His hair was longer, perfectly styled, and his navy suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sarah. He stood, arms open for a hug. I hugged him briefly, acutely aware of Jake beside me. Marcus, this is Jake. Jake, Marcus. They shook hands, Jake's grip too firm, his smile forced. Marcus's handshake was easy, confident. Great to finally meet you, man, Marcus said warmly. Sarah's told me a lot about you. That was a lie. I'd barely mentioned Jake to Marcus. Same, Jake said shortly. We sat down and tension immediately filled the air. This wasn't the relaxed dinner I'd imagined. Marcus ordered an expensive bottle of wine without checking the price. Jake's eyebrow twitched. So, Jake, Marcus said, leaning back casually. Sarah mentioned you work in IT support? Something about his tone felt condescending. Or was I imagining it? Yeah, Jake said. Systems administrator? Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Stable work is important. I'm in venture capital, now a lot of risk, a lot of reward, you know how it is. I jumped in quickly. So Marcus, how's your family? Is your sister still in Boston? But as Marcus talked about his sister's promotion at some prestigious firm, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd made a terrible mistake. The dinner spiraled out of control. With every passing minute, when Jake mentioned his recent promotion, Marcus said, "That's great, man. Everyone's got to start somewhere." Start somewhere. Like Jake was a beginner in a game Marcus had already won. When the food arrived, Marcus cut into his veal and smiled. This veal is incredible. Sarah and I always shared it here. You should try it, Jake. Jake had ordered chicken. His fork paused mid-doubt. Why was Marcus doing this? Bringing up our past, our traditions, our memories? Actually, I said quickly, I've been trying to eat less meat lately. Jake gave me a small, grateful look, but Marcus continued. Remember that trip we took to Italy? That little vineyard in Tuscany? God, that was incredible. My chest tightened. It had been one of the best weeks of my life once. But bringing it up now felt like betrayal. That was a long time ago, I said firmly. Jake and I are actually planning a trip to Japan next year, I added. Though we'd only mentioned it in passing. Japan's great, Marcus said. I go there twice a year for business. If you need any recommendations, we're good, Jake said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Just trying to help, man. I drank my wine too quickly. How had this gone so wrong? I wanted Jake to see Marcus as normal, unthreatening. Instead, Marcus was proving every insecurity Jake had ever voiced, and worse, it was working. Jake was shrinking in his chair, getting quieter. He looked defeated. Excuse me, Jake said suddenly, standing. I need to use the restroom. He walked away, and I was alone with Marcus. The moment Jake disappeared, I leaned forward. What are you doing? Marcus looked at me innocently. What do you mean? I'm just being friendly. No, you're not. You're being an asshole. You've been putting Jake down all night. Why? Marcus took a slow sip of wine. When he set the glass down, his expression had changed. The friendly mask slipped. You really want to know why? His voice was quiet, dangerous. My heart pounded. Yes, because you contacted me, Sarah. After almost a year of silence, you reached out. You know what I thought? That maybe you'd realized you made a mistake. That leaving me was the worst decision you ever made. My stomach dropped. Marcus, I'm with Jake, he repeated, voice dripping with disdain. With that ordinary, boring guy who can't give you half of what I gave you. Do you know how many women would kill to be where you were? And you threw it away for him? I felt slapped. We broke up for a reason. You were never around. Your work always came first. I needed someone who actually had time for me. And now you have all the time in the world with Jake, right? All that time to be mediocre together. The venom in his voice shocked me. I thought if I showed you what you're missing, you'd wake up. But you're defending him. Because I love him, I said forcefully. I love him, Marcus. Not you. Not anymore. Something flickered in his eyes, hurt or anger, I couldn't tell. You'll regret this, he said quietly. When the novelty of normal wears off and you realize you've settled for less, you'll regret it. And I won't be there waiting. Jake returned before I could respond. He looked pale. Ready to go? He asked, not sitting down. The dinner's not over, Marcus started. It is for me. Jake pulled out his wallet and threw down cash. Sarah, let's go. I stood quickly, relief flooding through me. Jake, wait, but he was already walking out. I grabbed my purse and followed. Leaving Marcus alone at the table outside, Jake's hands were shaking. Jake didn't speak during the walk to the car. His silence was worse than any fight we'd had. Inside the car, he gripped the steering wheel but didn't start the engine. Jake, I started. Don't. His voice was rough. Just don't. Please, let me explain. I had no idea he would act like that, wasn't he? Jake turned to me, pain clear in his eyes. Or is that exactly who he was, and you just didn't care because he had money and success and everything I don't have? That's not fair. You know what's not fair? You telling me I was insecure, that I was the problem, when apparently you dated a guy who thinks I'm worthless. You were with someone for 3 years who looks at people like me like we're beneath him. What does that say about you? The question hit like a punch. I never thought about it that way. I was different then, I said weakly. I wanted different things. And now? Do you still want those things? Because sitting at that table, watching you remember your trips to Italy and your fancy dinners, I kept wondering if you were comparing us. If you were thinking about what you gave up. I wasn't, I said, tears falling. Jake, I love you. I chose you. You chose to bring your ex-boyfriend to dinner to prove I was insecure. How the hell did you think that was going to go? He was right. Completely right. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. Jake started the car, his jaw tight. I need some time. I need to think about whether I can do this. Do what? Be with someone who thought the solution to our problems was to parade her ex-boyfriend in front of me. Be with someone who maybe, deep down, isn't sure I'm enough. The words shattered something inside me because I couldn't immediately deny them. Jake saw that hesitation. I watched his expression close off completely. We drove home in silence. When we arrived, Jake took his pillow and blanket to the couch. The next few days were torture. Jake spoke to me only when necessary, short, cold responses. He left early for work, came home late. Slept on the couch. I watched our relationship die in slow motion and didn't know how to stop it. I texted Marcus in anger. What you did was unforgivable. Don't ever contact me again. He replied immediately. I only showed him who you really are. You're welcome. I blocked his number, but the damage was done. I replayed the dinner constantly, seeing it from Jake's perspective. Watching my ex-boyfriend tear him down while I sat there. Hearing Marcus talk about our past like it meant more than what Jake and I had built. I thought I was proving Jake wrong. Instead, I confirmed his worst fears. On the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. Can we please talk? I asked, finding Jake on the couch. He looked up, considered, then patted the space beside him. I sat down carefully. I've been thinking, Jake said quietly. And I keep coming back to the same question. Why did you really invite him to dinner? I opened my mouth with my prepared explanation, but he shook his head. The real reason, Sarah, not the excuse. The real reason. I took a shaky breath. I think. Part of me wanted to see him again. Not because I have feelings for him, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I'd made the right choice. That leaving him for a simpler life for you was the right decision. Jake's face crumpled slightly. So you weren't sure? I am now, I said desperately. Seeing him like that, seeing who he really is, I know I made the right choice. Jake, you're everything he's not. You're kind and real, but you needed to see him to know that, Jake interrupted. That's what hurts, Sarah. You needed proof. We sat in heavy silence. He was right. Some part of me had needed to see Marcus to confirm I'd moved on. And that doubt had destroyed everything. So what now? I asked, voice barely a whisper. Jake ran his hands through his hair. I don't know. I love you, Sarah, but I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly compared to some standard I'll never meet. I can't be with someone who needs to prove they made the right choice. You're not a choice I settled for, I said through tears. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why did you need to see him? Why did you need to test what we have? I didn't have a good answer. I'd been so focused on Jake's insecurity, but I'd never examined my own. Never questioned why his jealousy bothered me so much. Why I felt compelled to defend my past so aggressively. Maybe because part of me was still holding on to it. I'm sorry, I said, and this time I meant it completely. You deserve someone who chooses you every day without hesitation, without needing proof. And I want to be that person, Jake. I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Jake looked at me, really looked, and I saw the war in his eyes. Love battling hurt. Hope fighting doubt. I need more time, he finally said. I'm not saying it's over, but I'm not saying we're okay either. I need to figure out if I can trust you again. I nodded, heartbreaking. I'll give you all the time you need. Jake stood, grabbing his jacket. I'm going to stay at my brother's place for a few days. We need space. Okay, I whispered. I watched him pack a small bag. Watched him walk to the door. He paused, hand on the doorknob, turning back one last time. For what it's worth, he said softly, you made me feel small that night. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I don't know if I can forget that. Then he was gone and I was alone with the weight of what I'd done. The apartment felt impossibly empty. Jake's coffee mug in the sink. His blanket on the couch. His toothbrush in the bathroom. I checked my phone constantly. Nothing. I took time off work, unable to focus on anything except the mess I'd made. How naive had I been? How selfish. Marcus had been right about one thing. I had reached out to him. Maybe not consciously wanting him back, but wanting validation, closure. Proof I'd made the right choice, and in seeking that proof, I destroyed the thing I was trying to validate. My best friend Lisa came over on the fourth day. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. What happened? I told her everything: the dinner, Marcus's behavior, Jake leaving. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You really messed up, she finally said. I laughed bitterly. I know, but it's not unfixable. If Jake is willing to work through this, if you're both willing to be honest about your feelings and insecurities, you can come back from this. What if he's not willing? What if I've hurt him too badly? Lisa squeezed my hand. Then you learn from this. You grow. But Sarah, you can't give up yet. If you love him, you have to fight for him. She was right. I couldn't just wait for Jake to decide. I needed to show him I chose him. That night, I started writing. I wrote down everything I loved about Jake, everything that made him special, everything I'd taken for granted. I wrote about the life we built and the future I wanted with him. I wrote until my hand cramped, pouring every ounce of my heart onto the page. On the 7th day, Jake texted, "Can we talk? I'll come by tomorrow evening." I spent the entire next day preparing. I cleaned the apartment, cooked his favorite meal, read through my letter 20 times. When Jake arrived, he looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. "Hi," I said softly. "Hi." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless meals, laughed, talked, shared our days. Now it felt like we were strangers. "I did a lot of thinking," Jake started. My heart clenched. "And I talked to my brother, my mom, everyone who would listen." He gave a small, sad smile. "They all said the same thing. That what you did was wrong, but people make mistakes. That relationships are about working through hard stuff, not running when things get difficult." I held my breath, afraid to hope. "But here's what I need, Sarah, complete honesty. I need you to tell me the truth about why you invited Marcus to dinner. Not the version you've convinced yourself is true. The real, deep-down reason." I looked at him, at this man I loved. I owed him the truth. "I was scared," I admitted. "Scared that your jealousy meant you could see something I was hiding from myself. That maybe I hadn't completely moved on from that life, from who I was with Marcus. I thought if I could prove to you there was nothing there, I could prove it to myself too. But you were right. I needed to see him to know. And that wasn't fair to you." Jake nodded slowly. "Thank you for being honest. I have something else." I pulled out the letter. "I know words on paper can't fix this, but I wanted you to have it. To understand how I really feel." Jake took the letter, unfolding it carefully. As he read, I watched his expression change: surprise, pain, softness, and finally hope. When he finished, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. "This is beautiful, Sarah, but I need more than beautiful words. I need to know you're all in, that you won't run to your past every time you doubt our future." "I am all in," I said firmly. I blocked Marcus. I deleted every photo, every memory, every connection to that part of my life. Not because you asked, but because I needed to. For me. For us. Jake reached across the table and took my hand. I felt like I could breathe again. "I'm not saying everything is perfect," he said. "We have a lot of work to do. A lot of trust to rebuild." "I know. And I'm ready to do that work. Whatever it takes." Over the next few months, we went to couples counseling. We had hard conversations about insecurity, trust, and baggage. Jake admitted his jealousy was rooted in fears of not being enough, fears that existed long before me. I admitted I never fully processed my relationship with Marcus, that I jumped into something new without understanding what I really wanted. We learned to communicate better, to voice fears before they became fights. We learned that loving someone meant choosing them repeatedly, in small moments and big decisions. That trust was built brick by brick, day by day. The dinner with Marcus became a turning point, not in the way I'd expected. Instead of proving Jake's insecurity wrong, it exposed the cracks in our foundation and forced us to repair them properly. 6 months later, Jake proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or with some grand gesture, but at home on our couch, the same couch where we'd had our worst fight. "I want to spend my life with you," he said simply. "Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to work on this with me. Because you chose me and you keep choosing me every day." I said yes without hesitation. This time there was no doubt in my heart. I'd learned that real love wasn't about comparing options or proving choices. It was about showing up, being honest, doing the hard work to build something meaningful together. Looking back, inviting Marcus to dinner had been one of my worst decisions. But it had also been necessary. It forced both Jake and me to confront our insecurities and baggage, to either work through them together or let them destroy us. We chose to work through them. We chose each other, and that choice, made consciously and repeatedly, was worth more than any fancy dinner or expensive trip or grand gesture. It was real. It was ours. And it was enough. I never heard from Marcus again, and I was grateful. I didn't need closure from him anymore. I'd found it within myself and the relationship I'd fought to save. In the future I was building with Jake. Sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most important lessons. Sometimes almost losing something teaches you its true value. I'd almost lost Jake, but in fighting to keep him, I'd found something I'd been missing all along: complete certainty in my choice, complete commitment to our future, and complete peace with my past.